Again, you know what, David? You want to fuck with me, right?
Do it.
Do what?
Indio
I'm Indio from the Bronx. I'm living in Manhattan right now. I live in a building. Shut up, bro.
All right.
I live in a building that is infected with crackheads, Dopey, and all about. Even Pillhead.
It's true. I've been there.
And this Davis right here used to be one of my old customers. And right now, his life is straight, and I hope he stays that way. Dopey Nation.
Stay strong.
Stay strong. Dopey. Deuce.
Toodles.
Doodles. Toodles.
This episode of Dopey is brought to you by our friends at Aloe Recovery, located in sunny Southern California out in Silver Lake and Malibu. Aloe is a facility that really takes care of its clients because it cares about them. It offers them respect. Their motto is connection, not control. Aloe was created by our good friend Bob Forrest and his friend Evan and their friend Bob, and they basically exist to really take care of addicts. They treat co-occurring mental disorders, including SMI. They have incredible amenities, including sound bath meditations, which I'm really looking forward to trying if I ever go back to rehab. Horseback riding, fucking surfing, sweat lodges, and you should not go to Aloe on a vacation. You should go there if you want to get better. If you're fucked and you're willing to go to California to get better, there's no place better to go than Aloe Recovery. This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by our friends at Just Coffee Co-op. Just Coffee Co-op makes delicious coffee. I had 2 glasses of iced Just Coffee today while recording the show. We were at my dad's. I made them in the drip. We had the Mayan super dark roast, but I'm looking at a beautiful bag of a light roast called the Humdinger with notes of citrus, tangerine, and honey, a single origin from Sidima, Ethiopia. I mean, the packaging is enough for me to think I'm drinking the best coffee in the world until I have a taste. Taste of Just Coffee is just fucking great. So that's justcoffee.coop. You put in the Dopey Pod code to save a little bit of money. They do coffee right. It's beautiful. It's worth the money. And harass them to make the Dopey blend with dark chocolate. And a Dominican coffee does sound appropriate. So that's justcoffee.coop. The coffee's as good as I'm saying. I wouldn't just say it. It's fucking good coffee. This episode is also brought to you by you guys, the Dopey Nation. Whoever contributes to the Dopey Podcast Patreon page, thank you. If you want to help out with the show and you want to throw some money, you go to www.patreon.com/dopeypodcast. You certainly don't have to give if you want to. It's great. I totally hate asking for your money, but I do love to get it. Dopey Podcast. And without further ado, here's the show. To Dopey, the podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And I'm Dave, and it's a very exciting day. We've got another Dopey in the Family episode, and Linda's here. You want to say hi?
Hello.
And my dad is here.
Yeah, hi, everybody.
He won't be here long, don't worry.
Yeah, and
we have a guest from England, a reporter and producer. What would you say you are? A reporter or producer?
Yeah, just a journalist. Covers everything.
A journalist from the British Broadcasting Company, the BBC, and it's Vicky Baker. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Vicky Baker was thinking that Dopey is really something special, and she wanted to write a piece about it, which I think is great. So here you are.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to actually be on the podcast, though.
Well, how could we have you in the room if you weren't on the podcast? What were you going to do? Just act like you weren't
I was
here?
just going to be a silent witness in the background.
It wouldn't have been as good. So, Vicky, tell us why you've decided to introduce Dopey to the British press, the world.
Wow. Well, I just love the story of how you guys got started, and I think you've got something really interesting here.
Did you say it's the greatest podcast you've ever listened to?
Of course.
And you discovered Dopey because of This American Life, correct?
That's right. I listened to that episode, and those of your listeners who've listened to it as well will remember that there was another segment about a Syrian radio station.
Yeah, I didn't listen to that.
Well, I knew someone who worked for that station, so I was like, kind of pulled in because of that at first, and then there was the other story, your story that went with it that left a mark. And
I don't see you. I don't see you in Syria right now. I see you in my dad's kitchen. So obviously, Dopey was the more interesting story.
It's safer here.
Now, do you think you're capable of making a piece more comprehensive than Dana Shivas at This American
gosh,
Life?
I would never try and challenge that. I'm a big fan of that show.
No, right. I'm sure you're going to do a great job, and we're very excited to have you. And it's very rare that we have 3 mics set up for Dopey. I have a fourth mic that I bought with the Patreon money, but I'm too stupid to figure out how to set it up. So there we are. Now, before we get underway with the show, Vicky wanted to interview my dad and Linda a little bit, so we're going to turn the show over to them and go for it. What do you got to say?
Oh, Vicky, you're going to ask us questions.
Vicky's going to ask questions.
But by the way, David, you're going to have to control your blasphemy on this show. This is BBC,
Cursing is not blasphemy.
Well, okay, then you're going to have to control your cursing.
Well, Vicky can bleep. She's got a studio.
Okay.
So yesterday Dave came to our studios.
It's beautiful. World Financial Center, very classic spot. Yes.
Good views. And we did the backstory, which was great, and all your listeners will be very familiar with. So I guess today I'd kind of like to find out a little bit more from you guys about Dave.
This is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
He looks very uncomfortable right now, just so everybody knows.
David was worried about everybody being nervous, but he's the one who's the most nervous sitting here.
I just want this to go well.
We want the sweat.
I just want this to go well. Now tell them how great I am, please.
Well, we're going to tell the truth. Obviously.
Ask a question.
No, she did.
I mean, it's as simple as that. Tell me about Dave.
Tell me about that.
That's a question.
Let's be brief.
Well, he was a sweet young boy for sure. He was an absolute wonderful kid. Was a wonderful kid. He was a wonderful young boy, and
okay.
And when did it go bad?
Sensitive, right? He was very sensitive.
No, yeah, he was wonderful. He was a good kid. I mean, there was a little bit of trauma at his birth.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That probably explains why I became a heroin addict.
I don't think so. Maybe David's not even going to know which one of trauma I'm talking about.
There's lots of
Is that
traumas.
when he fell off the changing table and hit his head?
Well, that was the second trauma. The first trauma was his bris, was the circumcision.
Oh, yes, I remember.
He had, at 8 days of age, he had a terrible staph infection, and he was in the hospital.
Because of a faulty moil, which is a very embarrassing story.
Which is the religious person who does
The
the
rabbi
circumcision.
used the dirty knife, right?
And it never was decided whose fault it was, but
I blame you, by the way.
of course you blame me. Actually, and Mom, Davy's mother, never ever went to a circumcision from that day on. Never. She refused to go.
But I got very sick.
Unbearably sick.
A layer of skin peeled off my whole body, and I had stitches all over my body because of it.
They had to put, he has when they for the IV for the antibiotics. He was a little baby, so he was moving forward. So they put IV in his leg and lower down in the ankle and on his neck, and there's still you see that. And then which could be a cause for later problems when he was
When you fell off the changing table and hit your head?
Yes,
That was the second traumatic.
That was, and I blame.
Not to mention bad bad parenting for the next 17 years. That couldn't have helped.
Listen, and maybe Linda's going to talk about this later, about this, the topic of addiction.
Moving along, Dick. Come on.
But believe me, his mother and father had nothing to do with his addiction. That's not the truth.
That's the party line.
That's my line, which is probably closer to the truth than his line.
You didn't become a heroin addict, right?
Oh, you did.
And living here in this apartment for my whole life. I mean, come on. You can't possibly... Listen, I don't think it's your fault, but you couldn't have been a great help because I became a terrible heroin addict as your son.
But are you blaming your dad for that?
Or I'm just saying, I've never had a smidge of finger pointing at my parents.
That
good.
actually sounded very finger pointing.
No, but I just think it's silly, when I'm a drug addict, and I was on drugs for so long, for you to say it had nothing to do with you and mom. Because it's all interconnected.
It's all connected. Everything's connected to
all right, and you know what? And it could be genetic also.
Where's the genetics?
The genetics of being compulsive with something,
who in the family was ever compulsive or addicted?
Nobody. Oh,
you can tell the Zyde alcoholism story.
Oh, that's my grandfather.
You don't remember that story?
Well, he was. But there's a lot of funny stories, but you want to make it brief. You want this to be brief.
Tell the Zyde alcoholic story.
He was supposed. My grandmother and my grandfather were going up to the Catskill Mountains, which the British audience won't know this, for Passover.
Maybe some will.
For Passover, and they go up for Passover, and they unpack everything, and he forgot his shoes. He forgot the shoes for the Seder, but then he takes out the bottle of whiskey, and my grandmother said, "Villy, you remember the whiskey, but you forgot your shoes."
That's very telling.
Anyway, and the next day I had to drive up from Queens to bring my grandfather his pair of shoes.
You used to do the imitation much better.
Yeah, well,
Billy, you forget the whiskey, but you remember your shoes.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I didn't want to overdo it. I figured you should do that. And the other thing was, he's like 85, 88 years old, and the doctor says, Billy, you're really drinking too much. And my grandfather said, okay, and then he stopped drinking, and that was it. He lived to be 99.
Good inning.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Anyway, so David is when he was here, we had no idea of anything amiss, and he went to college, and he had his own apartment, and Nancy and I we had no idea that there was any problems whatsoever. And the phone call that we got from David saying that he was a heroin addict was totally out of the blue.
Which I think that you should have been more aware of what was going on.
Again, guess who he blames? You see, that's why I'm on the show every 8 weeks to come back.
Listen, I want to make this clear to everybody. I do not blame anybody for my addiction, but I was totally fucked by the time that I called them. I was in a detox at Beth Israel. And at that point, I had been using heroin for 2 years, and you guys, I'm in my fucking hospital scrubs, fucked up every which way, and my parents come in from the theater. My mom's wearing like a silk scarf around her neck, smelling like Chanel No. 5, and my dad's in a suit, and I'm like on this free detox ward. It was pretty terrible. It was a pretty nightmarish situation. Now, I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying something is amiss because I was on drugs every day for 2 years, and I lived 3 blocks away, and I was here often, and you guys had no idea what was going on.
Do you think, though, that the signs, if you hadn't come across them before, are hard to spot?
That's a good point.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like,
it was,
we're in the.
Well, especially with heroin, because I know personally from living with a heroin addict, but I wasn't very familiar with what heroin looks like. That's an excellent point, and people could say, "Oh, they're tired." There's things you can say, and you were also of an age where you could have been.
I think also, but also like I was literally. Excuse me. I was literally stoned every day for 5 years.
In their face, or were you living in an apartment down the street?
Every minute of my life from 19 to 41, basically, I was stoned out of my mind. and I'm not saying this like it was your fault.
It was your choice to use those drugs.
Of course,
they
I'm
weren't
just saying
injecting you with
it's
heroin.
far out to me. I think it's more about my parents' naivete than anything else.
Well, I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm telling you, we had no clue.
Well, I also think I was considering the kind of life I had. I had a very successful job. I was making enough money to pay. I wasn't coming to you for money at that point. I don't think.
That was, see, I mentioned this on one of the episodes. One of the only clues I ever had was when I knew that David was working on this television show and he was making more money than me and his mother put together. I said, do you know how to save money? Do you know how to invest? Do you know how to, do you need any help and advice of how to put away some of this money? And he said, no. And I said,
no, I don't need help, or no, I know.
No, he didn't. Well,
I didn't know it.
The gist of it was no, he didn't even admit that, of course. But what you did say was, no, I don't need any of your help. And I said to myself, there's something
up. There's something
doesn't make sense.
That was a red
here.
flag for you.
Yeah.
But then but then not really. A little bit. You were like, what the fuck is David doing? And then whatever. And I do not blame my parents for my addiction.
Right. There's nothing wrong with trying to kind of, weed it out and talk about it. And I know it probably feels uncomfortable to talk about, but it's helpful, I think, for people who are listening to the podcast to hear that there's impacts being made possibly by parents or by spouses that they might not even realize could be contributing or leading to use. And another thing that's interesting, there was a meme on Dopey Nation that said the number one gateway drug to the number one gateway drug is trauma.
Wow.
And I thought that was so powerful. But another thing that's very interesting that I've read is that everybody has a different level of what can be traumatic, right? So, what might be traumatic for me, you might be like, whatever, and wake up the next day and, go about your day. But for me, it had a traumatic impact. So I think also because you were such a son, I know just from hearing from your parents and knowing you and your sister, you were a very sensitive boy. And you might have needed a different level of TLC that maybe not everybody knows necessarily, so or there may have been something happened to you that was traumatic that wasn't necessarily some crazy red flag.
I think that may be incorrect.
I was getting a very low level of TLC.
No, I think what I think David was a con artist as a young boy.
All addicts are. I mean, that's one of the greatest hallmarks for addicts.
Yeah, but you're not born a manipulative con artist.
I think I might have been. No. I think that goes with the territory. But who is the fool? The fool or the fool who is fooled by the fool? If you knew that I was a con artist, why did you let me con you?
No, I didn't know you were conning me at the end because I never even asked you ever if you were ever on drugs.
No, but I remember the
English teacher.
No, it was social studies.
Social studies. I thought it was the English.
No, it was Mrs. Eichler.
We go to open school night, and Nancy and I ask him, so how is he doing? And David says, David thinks he's playing me like a fiddle, but he isn't.
And then she came home and I said, I'm playing her like a fiddle, and then it all came out, kind of thing. Any other questions, Vicky? Let's move through this thing.
So, Alan, when you did find out that Dave was using heroin, what was your reaction? What was your reaction to that particular word?
Well, just to show you how naive Nancy and I are, we go to that place where he was,
Stuyvesant Square at Beth Israel.
Yeah, which was pretty close to where
a real dump,
where I went to school and where I was born, right near there. And we walk in there, and the guy says, your son is addicted to heroin. And I said, well, he'll be all right next week, won't he? And the guy looked at me like I was naive. And I don't know how many years later. But see, the other question is that if you don't blame anybody for why you're an addict, who gets the credit if you become sober? And it got to be the same person. Same person.
It's
David.
It's totally irrelevant. I mean, obviously,
that's a good point, though.
Obviously, it's nobody. It's it's my. Is it my fault I got addicted? I guess so. I like doing drugs. It's but if I think it was my fault. I think there's a lot of ways to look at it. I think it's irrelevant whose fault it was, and I think it's irrelevant whose fault it is that I got better.
Right.
I don't think that's what it's about.
And I don't think the word fault is good. I remember saying to David, that when he would do something where he would get in trouble for it, his friends would do exactly the same thing, and there would be no ramifications. And his friends may have taken almost the same types of drugs that David did, but suffered no consequences from it. So it has nothing to do with fault. It has to do with this idea of a disease, of some kind of addictive personality or addictive disease or something. Or maybe
I don't subscribe to that. I just think I don't think it matters. I honestly always, whenever we talk about this stuff, I don't think that that's the thing. Like, I certainly don't see it as a disease. I see it more as an illness. I don't. I don't want to get into the.
Well, someone made an interesting point on the page because we were chatting about it today. Is that this woman made a really interesting point.
Was it Colleen MC?
No. I love her, though. She actually sent a very interesting thing about, instead of codependence, she sent me this article about a new type of treatment called prodependence. And it was very interesting, but it's a whole other thing. But what one woman said was, and I thought it was a really good point, she believes that it doesn't matter if your parents are tough love or if your parents are like vicious enablers. She believes that none of that matters. And that the addict is going to do what they want to do, and that the addict's going to get better when they get better. So she was really cool about it. She sent me a private message, and she was
That's what I think.
She's like, I can't remember. I actually want to read her thing at some point, but I thought that was such and
I totally agree.
A lot of people will disagree.
I agree.
With her.
I agree with that 100%.
But she really and what she said, which actually ties into what you just says, is she said that, and then when the addict gets better, it's because they got better. Absolutely. And not because of
somebody else,
a tough love parent, an enabling parent, because they chose.
But remember that story where the guy gives advice of not to help their son, and the boy dies. And
I think what Linda said is 100% is what I believe. I think you don't, like, people ask how I got. I mean, that's why in 12-step they talk about a miracle happens. That you get better. Like, why all of this? I mean, I know I got better because I finally wanted to stop using. And before I wanted to stop using, I didn't want to stop using, so I didn't stop using. And I'm sure a ton of people can relate to that. Like.
Well, one woman said her parents were so in her face about getting well that she was like, well, fuck you, I'm not getting well because you're telling me to. Mm-hmm. So then that goes that direction. Then you have what? Because I said that.
Bleep.
Just bleep. No, please, just talk.
Well, that's what she said.
Just so you know, Vicky doesn't want cursing on her BBC.
You should have told me that.
No, but I don't fucking care about the fucking thing.
Bleep.
No rules here.
Well, I will respect. I don't need to curse.
I didn't say no swearing on your own podcast.
Of course not. He's no,
but I'm thank you for telling me. Well, I am too.
You are not. You are not. Okay, Vicky, you got any more questions? We got to get my dad out of here. Let's move this thing along.
So now I understand that you do have parents and relatives of addicts and former addicts listening to the show.
Time out. That's
listening to the show.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, there are parents and addicts and former addicts listening to the show.
Oh, absolutely.
But when you first found out about Dave's problem, how did you kind of educate yourself and find out about this whole new world that you were supposed to be?
Well, when we found out, that started the whole process of rehabs and outpatient and inpatient, and it was years of this, and
many years,
many years,
like 15 years.
I mean, it was a horror. It was a horror. It was. We had to go to a group for help, Families Anonymous.
Tell them how helpful Families Anonymous.
It was very helpful. I mean, when you sit around with parents and siblings who have the same problems, worse problems, horrible problems. And the only way you can
It's a 12-step program.
Yeah, but it
Well,
was.
It's the idea is it's a 12-step.
Like Al-Anon?
It's a 12-step program designed for codependency within families, where families can be quote unquote addicted to the children. And my mother, you have a 12-step. There's a 12 steps to Families Anonymous. You and mom showed it to me.
It may be true, but I don't. It's not It's to be able to live your own life and have a decent life, even though you're so worried and so upset about your.
Well, I think you were way more like my mom was ready to be like, all right, we're done with that chapter. Let's go square dance, and you were very hung
See,
up
that's
on
another funny thing. He thinks that the way we solve the problem is by going square dancing.
They joined a weird gay square dancing group called the Times Squares. I swear they did, and they became like they wore jean jackets and went do-si-doing around. Tell me it's not true.
So what's wrong with them having a coping mechanism to help
gay
deal with,
square dancing is their food.
to help deal with the stress that you were bringing to their marriage?
Listen, I think it's just funny that they were in a gay square dancing group.
Which had nothing.
Sounds excellent.
You eat brookies. I think that's funny.
The point of the matter is that Nancy loved the square dance, and it was the only square dance group in town. And then I got to enjoy it. It was really a lot of fun. It had nothing to do with what's his name's addiction. Nothing at all to do with
it.
It happened because we were up in Vermont, and our friends said, what do you call it? Mike and Jane said, go square dancing. And then we had to find a place in Manhattan. So we go to this place in Manhattan, and it turns out to be gay and lesbian square dance group. And Nancy was a big hit. She was a big star there.
The funny thing to me is that in my memory, it was like the gay square dancing was attached to Families Anonymous. Like at the end of every meeting, it was like,
everybody started
let's go to the hodown, and that's how I saw it.
Total nonsense. David is making everything up
I'm
here.
just saying that was my perception.
But it sounds like Family Anonymous wasn't so much like dealing with the codependency as helping helping of the families heal
and cope. I mean, listen, they wouldn't let me visit David and that first rehab in Florida unless I went to Families Anonymous, because I was so upset and so
wrapped up and
so anxious, and I was crying and all sorts of things.
It was really bad. It was like before I went to that treatment, I wouldn't go without getting drugs, so I made my dad give me money to go get heroin. And then I had a plan that I needed more money, so I started, and I owed some money around the building. So I had my dad giving me money to pay my neighbors back in the building, and I owed like 3 different people $20, but I was trying to be cagey, so I told my dad that I owed them all $60. So like I remember,
you were manipulating him.
Well, yeah, I was lying and stealing. So I was taking the money, and I remember I would put it in the cuff of my jeans, and I paid the guy, but I also paid the neighbors back because I didn't want to owe the neighbors money. So I paid the neighbors back. I took extra money. Then I took the other money that you gave me to get drugs before I went, and I went to Brooklyn, and I got a ton of heroin. And then I got ridiculously high. I stayed up all night. You came over to get me in the morning, and I was total mess.
Yeah, and it was before 9/11, so it
was after 9/11. It was after 9/11 because I remember 9/11 like the back of my hand.
Oh, yeah.
It was here.
Maybe you're right. Anyway, Nancy and I, we waited at the airport thinking that they would throw him off the plane, but...
They should have. But they wanted to, and I was just like, because I was like nodding out in a mess on the plane, and I was like, let me go to rehab.
Just get there.
Yeah, and we had brunch here for 3 couples, our dear friends, and during the brunch, I got the phone call from Florida saying that you were there and you were okay there. That's a million years ago.
What was the lowest point for you?
Cleaning out his apartment, picking him up that morning. His apartment was, he had graffiti written all over the board, help me, I need help, and of course it's fish that I had to save. He had a fish tank.
So what happened? He went to rehab, and then you went in to clean out the apartment, and
I got stuck by one of his needles. It was horrible.
You could just tell that he couldn't care for himself at all.
No,
the apartment was a total wreck. I had I had destroyed a couch and taken another couch in, and the couch I took in like stunk of urine. It was
Do you
disgusting.
remember writing "Please help me" on the walls?
I don't remember that. That's scary.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And I had a 55-gallon fish tank that was half full of water, and one fish had eaten all the other fish, and it was the only fish left.
Well,
it was a pleco.
Pleco, and I brought it to the pet store, and they took it.
Well, I bought it. It was 2 inches long. When my dad took it, it was like 12 inches long. It had eaten every fish in the tank. And I remember I would sleep in the loft bed, afraid that it would come out of the bed and attack me.
They come out of the tank.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. It would come out of the fish tank and eat me because I was on drugs and scared.
Losing it.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move through this thing.
So you're looking at that scene and you're thinking, where did you think it was going to go from there?
I had no idea. I don't know. Listen, it's a miracle that he's back. He's back. I mean, he's a pain in the neck, but he's my dear son. I mean, he loves. I mean, he is an incredibly wonderful person, and I mean, very outgoing. He has a big mouth. I mean, he talks to everybody. He's incredibly outgoing, and this Dopey Nation thing is amazing. Vicky, you should see some of the emails, the letters that they put on. How do you say it? iPad reviews, iPhone reviews. I can't.
Because you look at this shit all fucking day and you don't have any idea of what
By the way, you're still stuck at 422. How come nobody's writing any email reviews?
422?
The iPhone reviews. I stuck at 422 for the last week.
It's not at 422. It's not even. It's 1,000. It's
no. You remember what I'm saying? The written ones.
Yeah.
Not. He's gone up to 1,000 and.
All right, Dopey Nation. My dad is upset.
Yeah.
That there aren't enough written reviews. I'm going to see right now. I don't think he's right. There's 1,111 reviews and
but
422.
Exactly. It's been 422 for almost 2 weeks.
So what's going on, you guys?
What's going on?
I haven't been asking for reviews.
You're constantly monitoring.
He's
obsessed. Wait a minute. We have this contest. Where he's going to have 2 million downloads.
Yeah.
And I predict.
No, it's we have this contest. But continue.
It was my idea. For
the
Pete's
contest
sakes.
was your idea.
The contest was my idea.
All right, continue. There's a prize.
Which I predicted 2 months ago that it was going to be June 15th. It's actually going to be around June 18th.
Linda,
I'm really
do you have a
close.
prediction?
What for what?
When we hit 2 million downloads.
Like what day?
Yeah.
I don't.
Vicky, any prediction? I say it's going to be Wednesday at 1 o'clock.
So that's June 19th. I think.
This coming Wednesday.
Yeah. Dopey Nation, please make a prediction. Please write a review for my dad, but don't mention him, please. And send in a prediction about the 2 millionth download, and let me know if this segment with this BBC reporter is too boring for you guys. I'm trying to bring some Dopey to this thing. I apologize. Any more questions, Vicky? Any questions for Linda?
Yeah, we haven't even started on questions for Linda yet.
Let's be done with my dad.
No,
please.
I love listening down.
Thank goodness there's somebody around here.
It's very relaxing.
Vicky,
I know. I'm like in a trance listening.
He's lulling you guys to sleep.
I'm used to his abuse, so I can handle it.
And I can forgive you for nearly making me a cup of tea in the microwave.
It's pathetic. He goes. Nikki comes in. Vicky comes in. My dad used to date this woman named Nikki. He goes, "You don't happen to know Nikki? She lives in London too." And she's like,
"That's
no.
not true."
And he's like, "Oh yes." And then he shows a picture. He's like, "Are you sure this is her?"
Again, isn't it amazing how he does it? I asked about another young woman who works for BBC. Obviously, I know she doesn't. I asked if you heard of her.
There's an Amelia. If you're Amelia from the BBC.
No, he said, "Do you know?"
No. If you heard of the charity,
it was very embarrassing.
If you heard of the charity,
he's starting to lose it. Just saying. Now, please ask Linda some questions. We're done with him. Is there anything else you need to know from him?
Well, we can. Are you going to go? Are you going to stick with us?
I'm not going to listen to him. Yeah, go ahead. Talk to Linda.
Okay, Linda.
Yes.
Tell me about how you met Dave.
How I met Dave. Well, I met Dave in that apartment that Alan just spoke about. So
yes, she did.
Yeah. So our friend Todd, who we've spoken about on the show, who I think the anniversary of his death, I think is today. I
the anniversary of Todd's
Today or
death
tomorrow.
is today or tomorrow.
It's today or tomorrow. So that friend and I, and then my best friend, we went to hang out with Dave in that apartment, and which is really interesting. And so we just went and hung out one night, and I remember I don't remember it being like that.
It was
Alan.
very romantic.
I don't remember it looking like that, and I don't.
It
really,
wasn't that bad.
Right? Like I don't.
It was years before.
But kind of like what you said earlier, Vicky, is that you were using at that point, and maybe I thought he just had smoked some weed because we were all drinking and what have you. But I didn't realize that he was a heroin addict.
I don't think I was a heroin addict. Yet.
Yes, you were.
Had you come across in your life other users, drug users?
Well, she was a drug user.
Well, I definitely enjoyed my own usage of things, but it never was in that family, right? So my friends used cocaine sometimes, we'd drink, we'd smoke weed, but it never went into the opiate world. So when Dave and I got together, I remember I mentioned this on the show before. He would have signs of using, but I didn't understand them. Like his pupils were really small, and I used to always say to him, "What's wrong with your eyes? Your eyes look really weird." And he'd be like, "Oh, I'm just tired. I just worked a double." And I'm like, "All right." Or he'd be sort of falling asleep, nodding out, falling asleep, where, didn't look like your normal falling asleep. And he'd be like, "I'm just really tired." And a lot of times it was just, "I'm really tired," a lot of mood swings. But, I didn't really, like you said, I didn't really know what to look for. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people where they have a partner who's using a substance they're not familiar with. And, so we met for the first time that night, and then we met what was it 10 years later, right after his mom had passed away.
I think it was 13 years later.
13 years later, right after his mom passed away. I was also with the friend Todd again, because they were best friends, and we met, and then we immediately started dating, and we moved into a very fast whirlwind romance.
I remember.
I don't know how romantic it was because he was using heroin and I was in my own weird place, but
I remember we got together very quickly, and then I remember I was at Katz's and I called you up and I was talking to you and I said, "I think you're going to be my girlfriend now." Do you remember that?
He moved very fast. Yes. He would come over, and I remember saying to him once, you're going to still go home when we're done hanging out, right? And he wasn't leaving, and I'm like, uh-oh. He became very attached very fast.
Well, I just figured Linda was very, very, Linda still is very, very beautiful, and I was
Stop with the was.
Linda's very beautiful, and I was just I'm not going to do better than this. I need to.
Oh, that's so funny.
What?
That's what I said about Mommy.
Well, I just had a feeling, that this was as good as it was going to get, so I better make it work.
As he's on every drug.
And you almost
what about
blew
me?
it. Yeah, you almost blew it.
But I did.
I did blow it. I lost the whole thing.
But I did. Despite his using and whatever he was going through, I was also going through my own stuff, and I was partying, and I wasn't squeaky clean, and there was something about him that I fell for. The real that's here now, I saw that. Maybe it's because it's the therapist in me. I'm very skilled at sort of finding that thing in people, no matter what. I do believe that, and I was able to still see this person that was there, and so dated for 6 months, and then I got pregnant. Yeah. And that's kind of how everything played out.
And then we broke up for
with our
4
daughter,
years.
with our daughter Nora, and then that kind of changed everything, because by that time he was in a full-fledged kind of habit, and then once you become pregnant and you're kind of on your way to being a mom, your priorities shift, and you start to become very perceptive of what's going on, and so that's kind of how things played out.
And when we were down at the restaurant where you worked earlier, Dave, talking to some of your colleagues, it was Fanny who works there, who was saying that she thinks that it was the children that made a difference in your life and turned things around.
The truth is, it was the children. It was Nora, but it wasn't Nora. What it was I was, on heroin and pills and pot, and Linda had left with Nora when Nora was a baby, and that was devastating to me. But the thing that was really scary was that after that had happened, the custody terms was that my father had to drive me out to supervise the visits. And I just felt so pathetic doing that with him, and it really bothered me. Like, I was like, this, here I am, I'm 36 years old, and yeah, my life has been one fucked up episode after the next, but this is as bad as it can be. Like, in rehab, you sit in these classes and they talk about like being in a dependent state, a codependent state, or an interdependent state. And I was in this total dependent state of, I was this child, my father had to drive me to see my child. My father had to take us out. My father had to drive me home. And I was like, I can't be this person. I can't have this relationship with my kid. And it was, that's why I say it wasn't for Nora. It was for me, because I couldn't live with it.
But I also know for me, because like I mentioned, like I'm a therapist, I think I definitely have some codependency issues. And there's this part of me that wants to help and save people and partners. And so I'm sure that was part of the attraction. That there was that piece. But once I became pregnant and had a child, I was like, screw you and your issues. I'm out of here. We have a child. Yeah. So that also enabled me to say like, bye-bye, which I did the minute I saw him shooting up drugs. I didn't realize what he was doing. I knew something was off when we were in our apartment, but there was that defining moment where I walked in on him and saw him using, and I literally called my father and I said, come get me, we're leaving. And the relationship ended. Mm-hmm. And like that. And I'm proud of myself. We're spending a lot of time talking about the addict and yay, you got clean, but you have to also you have to also be proud of the people who listen to the podcast who were able to have their own bottom line and say, now I'm going to take care of myself and my child, and say, gotta go, because that's very hard too. That's an addiction. There's a lot of addiction in itself.
I remember that day very well. I visited you that day, and I held baby Nora in my arms, and that night I got a phone call from you saying you threw David out. Yeah. Because he was.
I said you had to come get him because my father is coming and is going to break his legs.
By the way, we went out to dinner the other night. We were going to this restaurant that me, Nora, and David always went to alone, and Nora was sitting in the back of the car, and she said, "Yeah, the grandpa and I and my father always went to this restaurant." And Nora said that was when my daddy was sick. He wasn't around the house that much. She actually said that.
Well,
our daughter is starting to ask questions. Yeah. So it's become this new challenge for us of like how to explain.
But she said it very sweetly. I mean, it was she to her friend. It was very, very nice.
Interesting.
So have you thought about that, like the future of it?
Well, it's
very scary territory.
Yeah, this anonymous businesses.
What do you mean the future of what?
Of telling Nora.
Well, that's a piece of the show that we're going to save until after you go. Is there any other questions you have here?
It's okay. How do you guys feel about just sharing all these stories?
Well, I'm used to it now, but I think what I have learned is that it's doing so much good. I mean, I have never seen such wonderful letters and emails and all this modern stuff. This Twitter and Reddit and there's a Dopey Nation thing, which I kept ignoring it, and then I ignored it, and then you have to be accepted to it. I think. I mean,
I'm surprised surprised they accept.
Yeah, why do they accept me?
It's a Facebook group.
It's but they it's amazing. You should read it.
It's a support system.
It's incredible.
Very
and they're
active.
called the Dopey Nation. And anyway, it's incredible. I mean, 2 million downloads, and it's all around the world. And he's doing a lot of good.
Well, the
I feel
coolest
great.
thing is that it's cool that people get something out of it, but to me the coolest thing is that Chris and I started it as a joke, to have a good time. It was never meant to do any good. It was never meant
be so serious.
Yeah, it was never meant to do any of this stuff. It was meant to be fun, and it was fun, and it still is fun, but it was like an excuse for me and Chris to hang out and tell stupid drug stories, which is why, in a way, that's why I keep inserting drugs into every one of these stories, because I feel like the Dopey Nation deserves a little dopey in the show.
Yeah.
No matter what.
It's okay. You'll have a dopey episode.
I don't know. People have been saying the show has not been dopey enough.
It's pretty dopey to me. It's way too dopey to me. By the way, the other truth is that you really always wanted to do this. You really wanted to be a radio, to be out there and interviewing people. I mean, this is something that you enjoy and you have a talent for. So and you use the idea of having these wonderful conversations with Chris to do it. But this whole podcast is like a whole new world kind of thing.
Right.
I didn't anticipate it to be like that, though. And Dad, it was really nice having you on the show. So let's move to the next phase.
All right, he's getting rid of me. Okay, and stay strong, Dopey Nation.
Lynn, you sit over there.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
Should I leave you guys to it now?
I don't know. Do you have any other questions?
No, I think we're all good. But
Here, Dad,
thanks.
come back in. Say goodbye to Vicky. And I don't mean to. I just want the show to be the show, and I'm kind of obnoxious to my dad on the show, so I apologize.
It's part of the shtick for him to be obnoxious to me, and he never disappoints. So it's good. So, Vicky, you going to go now? Is that?
Yeah, I'm going to leave these guys to continue with the rest of the show as is
All right, very nice
planned.
meeting you.
But yeah, lovely to meet you, and thank you for having me. I wasn't expecting to be speaking directly to the Dopey
You were
Nation, but
Do you have anything you need to say to the Dopey
I
Nation?
still kept on still kept my fly on the wall type thing, and just listened to you guys, and it was fascinating.
Awesome.
And
Do you have any other stones you need to overturn? Like, why do American Jews make tea in the microwave? These kinds of questions.
that I'll just be asking myself that forever, shaking my head.
Well, there you go. Thank you for coming, Vicky, and thank you for doing this piece.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I just kind of rudely kicked everybody out of here,
Except for me.
except for Linda, because Linda doesn't
I'm
come.
the best.
Linda's the best, and she doesn't come on the show enough. And well, she comes on the show as much as she wants to, which is fine.
Not enough.
But there's a lot of funny stuff that happens in our life that I always want Linda to talk about. But now we're going to talk about Linda's. I mean, again, we brought this up earlier.
Social work.
This is
the social work minute?
Well, no, this is not the social work minute yet. Linda brought it up before with this woman who we're very happy that Vicky came in, and I'm thrilled that Vicky is doing a piece on Dopey for the BBC. I live for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I've been excited about it for weeks.
And she was great.
She's awesome, and I live for the Dopey to get spread. It gets me high. It makes me feel good. It's exciting. But something else that I've been really dealing with is what Linda brought up, and that's, today or tomorrow. I'm not good with anniversaries and dates, but Todd died last year today or tomorrow.
This week.
And Linda and I love Todd, and I feel a ton of pain about it.
Yeah.
I feel it's weird. Like, I ride the Long Island Railroad in the morning, and I listen to music and I cry, on the ride in, and it's weird. I listen to dance hall music and I cry. Mm-hmm. It's bizarre. I listen to this weird music and it makes me fucking
Why
cry.
does that make you?
It reminds me of Todd.
Did Todd like dance hall music?
Todd loved dance hall music. I listen to this.
I could see Todd's face.
Listen, I listen to this. Hold on. Yeah. This is what makes me cry, and I don't know why.
So no one take it personal. Who not talk about done? You think me come for done? All me have to do is send for the new gun. Anything test dead. just fly off dozen head. Down the mercy.
Kill them.
Look at it.
Just that kill them at the end. It's like this certain like braggadociousness in dance hall, and it makes me think of him, and it makes me think of being innocent with him, and like it's
just fun, pure fun.
It's painful, and I think about Todd last summer. I remember how much he hated getting clean. He liked it for a week, and then he was bored for a week, and then he fucking hated it. He liked it for a week, he was bored, and he fucking hated it. And he was like, Dave, can't I just smoke weed? He was at a halfway house in Massachusetts, and they had just passed, like, legal weed or whatever. And he was like, he went to the weed place to try to get bud when he was in the halfway house, and he couldn't get it. And, and then he turned up dead. Your friend Rob called and told us, or told me. He called me, right? He didn't, and it was like,
right.
It was like, it's just.
Well, I know. For me, when Todd passed away, our daughter was less than a month old. So and we and your daughter too, and we had moved into this beast of a old house, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing in this house. We had only been in there for under a month, so I didn't get to. I feel like I'm just grieving Todd now. I just over the last couple weeks have been frantically digging out old photographs of him and calling friends and thinking about him all the time. And I think that's what's so interesting about grieving is you never know
when it's going to come
on. And I also think when you lose someone, is something as sudden and senseless as overdose. I feel like that impacts a grieving process too, because it's so like hard to even wrap your brain around it.
It's fucked up. I mean,
and one other thing, Dave and I had an interesting conversation a few days ago around Todd's death, and Chris, but we were just talking about Todd at that moment. I said how I actually feel like he was more like murdered than that he overdosed and died because of the fucking fentanyl. And like he always, Todd definitely used drugs, but he wasn't he didn't have a death wish. He wasn't like, he loved to do his little bit of, he probably got cuddled in bed and wanted to do a little bit of heroin and probably watch like The Simpsons and curl up in his bed and feel good. And he had a problem, but no way in hell did he want to end his life. And
no, but that's the weird thing that 6 months before I took this long walk with him, and he said to me, Dave, I don't want to live anymore. He said, I hate my life.
I know, but
he said that.
But people say that all the time.
Right. I don't think
I don't see the connection.
Listen, he definitely didn't.
He was in a bad way, but I still feel like Todd was stolen, and even though he was a bad addict, and it doesn't matter, it still has the same end result. But I feel to me it makes it that much harder to wrap my brain around this whole thing.
And I'm not one.
Chris too.
I'm not one for drug policy talk and all that kind of stuff.
It's irrelevant, but it's killing people left and right. People who shouldn't be dying based on their use.
What it makes me think about is the old school war on drugs. And the old school war on drugs said that, Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan and in the 80s that drugs were destroying America, and they were going to take the war to the drug dealers. That was the war on drugs in the 80s.
I agree with that.
And now the war on drugs, to me, is the drugs killing the addicts. It's different than the government going after the drug dealers. It's like our friends are casualties of this war, but in a different way. And it is, my friend, I have a friend who I'm not into this kind of talk because I don't know what the hell is going on, but my friend calls it weaponized drugs, that fentanyl coming into America is planned.
They said, there was an article that they're calling it a weapon of mass destruction.
Right.
Anyway, so
like Bob Forrest will say that Big Pharma, it was, lots of people will point fingers and say that this is sort of planned out.
Right. But the irony, the reality is that Todd was using heroin, and heroin's pretty deep into on the drug chain. Yeah,
he was on heavy drugs.
He was on heavy drugs.
And what we're really talking about is
and he didn't want to stop.
And he didn't want to stop.
And ultimately, when you're on heavy drugs and you don't stop, that's often the end result.
Right.
even regardless of this horrible fentanyl.
So we miss Todd and we love Todd.
Yeah.
But
I hate that we it stinks to always go down this road of talking about the drugs and the use and this and that, but because it takes away from him in a lot of ways. But by the end of things with Todd, that was just such a gigantic piece of.
You know what I was thinking about though?
And I want to just laugh and talk because he was one of the most beautiful, fun people. So it's like we always go this road with him when we're talking about it, but there's just so much more to him than his stupid death,
I remember when me and him were younger. I remember in college, 4 of us would get into a car with him. He named his car Juanita.
Yeah.
And 4 of us would get into Juanita, and he had just gotten one of these graphics hookahs. So we would load up the hookah in the middle of the car, and we'd each have a tube, and we would drive around Ithaca smoking out of this ridiculous hookah. I also remember, we never talked about this, but after you and I got together, me and Todd got a bunch of coke and went to the Biederman's house. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And we sat there watching the video that we shot.
I made.
Yeah, the thing that we had shot. At the place you worked.
Yeah.
And I was just like, where are the pills? I need pills. I think I said I need pills.
Me and Todd again were like, we're having fun. You're being annoying.
Yeah, I was like, I need pills. I need to slow down.
I was thinking about Todd memories on the train coming in here, and we lived in this big hippie house in Oswego. It's called Governor Street, and it became like the notorious drug hippie house. And Todd lived there with me and a bunch of other people. And I remember we would get nitrous tanks for our parties, and we would just be getting giant balloons and hanging around doing nitrous. It's kind of weird, but the day after our parties, we'd always have a bit of a tank left. And Todd's favorite thing to do the next morning was for us to all sit together and just do huge nitrous balloons and watch The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And I have so many memories of all of us just sitting around just doing nitrous, watching Homer. And
it's also so funny because Todd's dad was a dentist, so he probably had a lot of access to nitrous in his life. And then the other thing is that the first night that Todd and I used heroin together, we watched The Simpsons. And nitrous, it's in a way
such a weird drug.
In a way, it's a little like dope in that you go down. I don't know, it's not, but it's like I love nitrous.
Really?
I in fact I remember the first time I went to your the second time I went to your dentist.
I know, you told us this story already.
I was like, give me the nitrous, man. I went to the dentist and my crown just came off. I didn't even tell you. It's nasty.
Okay.
No, what are you gonna say?
That's not important.
All right. So this is what I want to lead into Linda's social work segment on the benefits of tough love.
No.
What?
I don't have an opinion.
Or the benefits versus the problems with tough. I think that the point of the segment was that I often would, say that nobody gave Todd tough love, that everybody enabled Todd, and I do not blame Todd's parents for Todd's life or death, but I know that, he was enabled, here and there by everybody, and
by being given an apartment rent-free for years and years and years and years, so always having a roof over his head, where,
and clothes on his back.
Some parents would say,
fuck you.
Fuck you, and other parents would say, well, of course I want my child to have a roof over their head and be safe.
Well, my dad always was like, there's no way I would let you have been in the street, and if I hadn't been basically taken care of, they would have figured out a way to enable me, and they did enable me anyway. But the point is, when I went to treatment in Florida, the first thing they did was they told my parents to not pay my rent, so I lost my cheap apartment here, and that was the beginning.
I think that made a lot of sense, because they're going to keep paying for you to have this awesome apartment in Manhattan, and you're,
a drug addict in Florida in rehab.
So I don't know how tough love that is. I think that's just
common sense. No, it was a $300 a month apartment in Manhattan. Well, anyway, the point is that you put the message out to the Dopey Nation of tough love versus what's the other expression?
Oh wait, I just put a post out. It's so amazing, the feedback. It's the best. But I just put a question out there just to get listeners' take on or experiences with tough love versus enabling, and sort of, is there a gray area, and what does that look like, and do people have an opinion if one is more beneficial than the other, one more damaging? So it raised, again, so many different opinions and different takes. But just this one quote I want to read that actually a friend of mine sent me. It's from a woman named Glennon Doyle, who I'd never heard of, but I'm going to totally check her out. And she has a podcast, and she has an addiction history. Anyway, so my friend sent me this quote, and this is what the quote is. It says, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but anyway, it says, "It's not our job nor our right to protect our children from pain. They are hardwired to not only survive pain, but to find their purpose in it." And I think that's really powerful.
What does it mean to be hardwired to find your purpose in pain, though? What does that mean?
They're hardwired to not only survive pain, but find their purpose in it.
I don't understand what it means.
Well, a lot of people would say that through pain or struggle, that's how we grow. And that's where
I don't feel like
what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Right.
All that kind of
I just
BS.
don't feel like, I mean, personally, no, I guess I do. I guess I do. I think when you get to the other side of pain, you can find your purpose in the pain. I believe that.
So that's an interesting, so that was an interesting quote. I do think, personally, I don't know how I feel about that. I think I definitely would err more onto the side of the enabler. But I also can understand where tough love comes from.
Well, you gave me tough love. You broke up with me and you left, and that was
You're not my child.
No.
I think when it's your kid,
right.
I feel like you're hardwired as a parent to not do tough love. So I don't look down upon it, but I think it's probably really fucking hard to do tough love.
I think that
let me say one. Okay, so then there was one other thing that I thought was interesting that kind of goes against that, and it was from an NPR article that talks about why empathy is more useful with the opioid epidemic, with your kids or whatever, than tough love. In the woman's article, it ended with this: "If a child had cancer, parents wouldn't disengage with them or be angry with them. So I do think it aligns our scientific understanding that addiction is a disease and not a moral failure."
Yeah, but if a child had cancer, they're not going to lie and steal money to go get high.
Right.
If a child has cancer, they're not going to be like, "I need your money so I can get high and watch The Simpsons," and whatever the case may be. Having cancer is way different than being an addict.
But that just goes to people saying that addiction is a disease. That's where that becomes a tricky terminology.
Well, that's why I don't like it. That's why I don't like.
Right.
I don't like that terminology, because I think that people who have leukemia don't operate the same people who have crack addiction.
The disease model for addiction.
Not particularly.
Right.
Are there any good comments from the Dopey Nation that you'd like to share?
Dave's getting uncomfortable with that. How serious this is getting.
No, I'm not. I don't particularly have. It's funny because I was sitting.
People are very interested in this stuff.
I was sitting with Vicky at BBC yesterday, and she was asking me about solutions for addiction and what people can do, and I was like, nothing. I was like, there's nothing anyone can do. Fucking, you're either going to get clean or you're not. You're going to either get a chance to be clean or you're not. And there's nothing anyone can do except, I can, if an addict comes up to me and asks me how I did it, I'll tell them, and I can also tell addicts who are using that my life is a million times better sober.
So you'll like what Brian Armstrong says. Okay. Because he writes about you.
That's nice.
So I'm sure you'll appreciate.
Thanks,
you'll appreciate.
I appreciate that.
Since this is about you, we'll share this one. And I also like what Brian wrote. He said, "I think Dave captures it best when he talks about how there is no set formula for getting and staying clean, and how he doesn't know why one person can get it while another person doing the exact same thing cannot. I still to this day, 4 years, have a tough time describing to someone what it was that got me to stay clean. I think the same goes for tough love and enabling. Too much for one person may be good, it could have devastating consequences for someone else. And it could be either the enabling or too much love that does someone in.
Right.
Conversely, it could also save someone's life. So to me, this, as with most things in life, is a gray area.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well said. And I also like that Brian spelled gray, Gray, and I spelled it Grey. And I said,
I think Brian misspelled it. I think
No.
gray is spelled Grey.
No,
I think
it's
gray.
GRA. So I said, Brian, some people use gray and others use gray. And I used the spelling. And I said, both works for some, but cause others to feel very uncomfortable. And then Brian wrote, how about gray, Greigh?
Listen, I think you're a notoriously bad speller. And I'm going to tell you, Brian
was right, actually.
Gray and gray are both accepted in the
Yes.
English language. They refer to a color of a neutral tone. I guess gray is both. Gray, Gray, is more popular in America,
I know.
and Grey remains supreme in the UK.
So I wanted to be cool and use the UK version.
I always spelled it Grey too. What else you
But
got?
wasn't that a good comment?
Brian's? Yeah, I love that
like
he talked about what I
There's
said. I
so
think
many
that's
good
nice.
ones. Okay, and then okay, should I keep going or do you want to like move it
Oh,
on?
I want another one.
So there was, and then, okay, I already told this woman I was going to read hers because I liked it. Laura Bell wrote me a private message.
She DM'd you.
And she wrote, and I liked it. And I kind of mentioned her earlier with Vicky, but she said, "Hi, Linda. To your question regarding enabling and tough love, I absolutely do not think it is black and white. I've done it all, tough love, semi-tough love, plain old love, to ball busting, leaving my son in jail, hoping something would work. None of it did. As a mother or father, it just isn't natural to turn away from your children, especially when they're at their lowest. Because of that, I think I made it very easy for my son to be a drug addict. He knew I wouldn't abandon him, even though I should have, at the very least, limited his access to me and our home. Even with that, I believe he got clean because he chose to get clean. I think he would have used drugs for the years that he did, no matter what I did, honestly. The things we went through because of his drug use led him to sobriety, but I don't believe that was why he chose it. He was tired, pure and simple. I really don't think anything I did, tough love or enabling behavior, tipped him over to sobriety. Who really knows, though? I would have done a million things different, but I can honestly say that I'm happy he made the choice the way he did, and not as a direct result of anything I did. I like that. Hope that makes sense and is helpful in some way. Kind regards, Laura. Stay strong, Dopey Nation.
Nice.
I thought that was like brilliantly said, and I really appreciated that.
I want to play a voicemail. Did you listen to the voicemail I sent you?
I was on the train. I didn't have reception.
This is from Camilla. I want to say she's English, but no, she's Australian, and it's about this stuff, but it's a different take. So I'm going to play Camilla. Here we go.
Hey Dave, this is Cam calling again. I was just listening to a back episode, and you and Chris were talking about you were doing one of those Q&A things that you did earlier on, and somebody had asked you about parenting and like what you tell your daughter and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm a single mother with 2 kids, a 5-year-old and a 16-month-old, and I've been mainly sober for the bulk of my 16-month-old's life, but my 5-year-old, her whole life I was using. I'm now 104 days sober. And just in terms of like what kids understand, so like they absorb everything, obviously. But I'm really starting to see now with her at 5 how much my behaviour has affected her. So just in terms of little things like cleanliness and routine and structure, she tends to parent me. I know she doesn't trust me sometimes, so she's quite vigilant with me with the baby. She'll often, when she goes to school, she's told me before, now don't take your eye off, I don't want to say my baby's name, but don't take your eye off the baby. But then she's also got a few little other like anxiety tics and OCD tics, which I wonder, it's hard to tell. But when I relapsed in January, and I relapsed with alcohol, and I was trying to, I suppose, conceal it from her. Anyway, she immediately picked up on it and she goes, "Oh, no, Mum, you're drinking that bad juice again." And I was just like, oh, no. Anyway, I got sober again, and now I go to a lot of meetings. And because I'm a single mum, it's hard to sometimes get to meetings. I can take my baby. He comes with me to a lot of meetings. So last night, Tuesday night for me here, is a meeting that I really like to go to, and my beautiful father will often come and watch the kids. And I was doing something with my daughter, some craft thing, and I said, "Look, I've really got to go. I've got to get to my meeting." And she just looked at me and she said, "You know, Mum, meetings aren't really that important for kids." And it just made me laugh because, one, just her little attitude, but two, I just was like, they are so important for kids because I am able to be her mother because of them. So I know this isn't a terribly dopey story, but it is dopey in the fact that dopiness and addiction, like when you have kids, it's a whole other ball game. And I'm just so grateful that, and I think you'd probably relate to this, I'm so grateful that I'm taking my recovery so seriously now while my children are young. I've got a dear friend who's 10 years older than me with 2 teenage kids, and she's a chronic relapser, and is, often attempting suicide, and her kids are really suffering for it now. Her daughter actually attempted suicide last week, so and is self-harming a lot. So yeah, it's really, I'm just really grateful that I can give myself, my sober self, to my children, and yeah, one day I'll be able to tell. I'm definitely going to tell my kids my story. So anyway, rambling. Another recording from me. I doubt you'll ever play any of them because they're probably also boring, but I just find it actually quite helpful when I listen to the show to then respond to it. And maybe this just goes off into cyberspace somewhere, but it's quite therapeutic. So love to all the Dopey Nation. Stay strong. May God grant you the serenity. Peace out.
All right, that's Cam from Australia.
Wow.
Pretty powerful voicemail.
That was probably my favorite voicemail ever.
Really? That was your favorite voicemail ever?
So good.
It was
very emotional.
It was more than Buzz and Jeremy Turner on the deck of the tugboat shooting dope and all that.
I love that voicemail and her vulnerability and honesty. Your daughters are so lucky to have you as a mom.
Well, just keep up the sobriety. You know what I mean? Like, keep it up and like.
But even that you're Camilla.
Camilla, yeah.
Even that, you're that in tune to your daughter to see that it's having these little impacts on her. And your daughter sounds pretty incredible. But that you're even so aware of your children and what you need to do. It's just, that was very powerful. And I'm so glad you shared that and called in with that voicemail.
I've been getting a bunch of notes from Camilla. I think that, and Camilla is also the name of Gonzo's Chicken on The Muppet Show. I don't know if you're aware of that,
I
Camilla.
Know that.
But so whenever I hear the name Camilla, all I can think about is Gonzo's Chicken on The Muppet Show. So I apologize for that. And if Camilla, if you don't know about this, she goes, she's a lot of balk, balk, balk. I just love that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Well, she should share it with her children,
Right.
But I appreciate you writing and getting so much out of the show. And I think I was using when our daughter was little, and I feel the same gratitude about it. And that leads us to the next thing. And I don't know how much you want to talk about this. We don't have to talk about it at all. I can erase all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But last week, Linda and Nora and I were sitting at a table outside our house, and I had grilled an amazing meal. Mm-hmm. And I think we had burgers and asparagus, if I remember correctly. And I'm really very, very good at grilling.
Yes.
Tell them.
No, it was a very delicious meal.
And we were talking about Todd, I think. And Nora...
Well, she was starting to ask some questions.
Nora said, how did Todd die? And we had told her that Todd had died from drugs.
Yeah.
And then Nora said to me, did you do drugs, Daddy? And I said, yes. And it kind of... This conversation that I've been totally trying to postpone...
Well, didn't we kind of have... I mean, I remember we did have this conversation sort of months and months and months earlier.
Not in the same way.
Right, but it was very, like, so... It's interesting to show sort of like the evolution of a kid and how, you know, we touched on it months ago, but it was very quick. It was very vague. And whatever it was, 5 months later, now she's coming back with more clear, direct questions, which shows that she's been processing this.
And paying attention, starting to make connections. So Dave and I are like, uh-oh, here we go.
And she's smart.
She's incredibly smart, and she's... You know, it's funny with our kid, like, sometimes she cares and sometimes she doesn't. And when she decides she cares, she's like a journalist on the case, and she's putting all the pieces together.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, fuck, do I have to come out with it now? And I basically did. You know,
But what's interesting though, because Dave kept like not being sure. Should we cut this short? Should we change the subject? But I think this is, you know, we're learning this, you know, alongside the listeners. So this is kind of, I guess, interesting for people who have kids too, possibly going through this, or you're going to, is that she asked her questions. We answered them to the best of our ability, but when she was like sort of full, like her cup was full,
she was done.
And so in a way, it kind of shows, you know, that a child will take in as much as they can, as much as their brain can absorb, and then they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go like draw cartoon characters. Bye.
Well, I got really nervous.
But, sorry to interrupt you, but Dave the next day was devastated at how the conversation went, where I actually felt like it went pretty well. So we talked about it, and the next day her and I had a long ride to go somewhere, and that's usually when the best conversations pop up, when there's just like this long aimless car ride. And we sort of followed up a little bit on it, and it wound up being a really good discussion just kind of around what addiction is. And we were able to use her uncle who smokes cigarettes. We were able to use sugar. We were able to use alcohol. Like, we touched a little bit on everything, but her main question continued to be, why would Daddy use drugs if he knew that he had me? And he knew that that would mean that he wouldn't be with me. So that was the tricky piece, right? Was to explain why.
She said that to you in the car?
Yeah.
What did she say exactly?
Well, she said that to you too, outside. She said, well, why would you choose to use drugs if it meant you wouldn't live with us? That was like the meat and potatoes of what she said.
What did I say?
You said that Daddy was with you. He just, you know, lived in a different place and was taking care of himself, but needed to be where he needed to be in order to do that. And,
you see, for me, the whole thing, my relationship with her is very, very, like, important to me. We have a very close relationship. Like, I love Nora, like, you know, more than anything. And, like, the idea of her questioning who I am or what I do is like the most painful thing to me that I can imagine, you know?
I do think she was questioning you. Like, I do think that did happen a little bit as far as she's, and this is, you know, let's be real, as much as it can hurt your feelings. I do think what was happening is she started to make the connection of, why did I live with Mommy in an apartment without Daddy for so many years? and when we shared that Daddy had an issue with drugs, she felt, and I think a lot of us do that when we have an addict spouse or an addict child or an addict, what have you.
You feel betrayed.
You feel, you take it personally. And it's very easy to explain that to an adult, why it's not personal. This person is sick.
And still,
but
though,
a 9-year-old says, like, but Daddy, why would you choose? She looked at it as a choice, and we needed to weed through that, because I think that was the biggest piece, was explaining this wasn't a choice, honey. And that Daddy actually needed to get better. And to piggyback on that voicemail, Dave goes to a meeting every Tuesday morning. It's Dave's day that he's home with us. And I get annoyed about his meeting because it's like a hectic time, and it's nice when he's home with me. But obviously I want him to go to that meeting. He does not go to enough, and that's his one meeting. And Nora is now, she asks about the meeting. What the heck is this meeting? What's the meeting? And I'll say to her now, and it's helpful in a way to say, the meeting is part of what helps Daddy be super healthy and be a super great dad.
It's crazy. The whole thing is crazy because
it's hard to wrap your brain around as a 9-year-old, I'm sure. It's
also like, it's totally natural for a family member to feel betrayed by somebody choosing drugs over them. And when it comes out of a kid's mouth, well, it comes out of a kid's mouth. It's like an adult can act like they understand, but not understand. The kid isn't even going to act like they understand. They're going to be like, but wait.
Well, that's great, though. I know. That's the beauty of it.
Right, exactly.
So that's what we're currently working on in our household. We'll keep you posted as we try to navigate through this craziness.
Now I want Linda to read a voicemail that I just got. But before she does, I want to read this weird note that I got because I think it's very dopey. It says, "Hey, just wanted to tell you guys that I love your podcast. It keeps me positive and laughing at work. Most addiction podcasts are lame and boring, but yours rocks. Great job and keep it up. I am 40 and been a drunk and coke shooter for a long time. I've been clean for like 18 months, but most of that time was in prison. I am in the sobriety and parole right now, so it's easy. And I'm just, this is not the email I want to read, but I'm going to finish this. And I'm just trying to get myself prepared for staying clean while I'm free of paper. Love the stories. Addiction is a crazy wild ride, ain't it? I also have a bunch of crazy stories if you ever need any. Be cool and keep it up." And he wrote a review, which is nice.
I like the sobriety.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wanted to find this other thing. Oh, well. Now we have a chance. I've been trying to get Linda on this show since she was on the show before, but mostly because I love the dumb fucking stories from our life, and one of
not
the
my
stories,
social work minute.
No, everybody loves your social work segment, and I love that I love it too because I love how much you love it. And
I'm kidding.
No, I love your social work too. I do.
You're very disorganized.
I know, I'm very disorganized.
You're not impressing me. This is not making me want to come back on the show.
You're not going to come back on the show anyway. I can't find what I was looking for. So I want what? I couldn't find it. Sometimes, listen, when the show, the glory moments of the show were moments like this, where one of us yelled at the other person because they didn't know what they were doing. Okay. And now you're above that. You need me to impress you with my Do you think I was going to impress you with my organization?
Well, you have all these you're like rifling through papers, and I thought you were going to have some kind of.
Vicky was here, right? I was desperate to get the show up. I was desperate to make it good and entertaining, and I was trying to get some emails printed out.
So what's in that handful of papers there? Is there any? Are you going to? Is any of it useful?
I thought that one was.
You're waving them around like.
I thought that was better than I intended on being. Okay. Hold on. I want you to tell the story about my Christmas present.
What was your Christmas present?
A gift certificate to a certain place.
Oh, the float place.
Tell the story.
So I got Dave and I to go together gift certificates to go float, which I How do you even explain it?
It's a sensory deprivation tank.
Deprivation tank. Am I saying that right? Deprivation.
Yeah.
So it's just like ridiculous amounts of salt water. So you just float, and you go into this like tank, and there's no light. It's pitch black, and you float for an hour and a half, which is a long freaking time. And so first you walk into your room and you have to shower, and then you get in, and you put earplugs in, so it's just super quiet.
Well, I think when Linda got me the gift and she got herself one, she pictured us in like
holding hands
in a room
in a double tank.
In a double tank.
So we were next to each other, but you're in here with your earplugs in and your own dark tank and whatever. So we go in, and what did they say? So Dave's like, well, what happens if the hour and a half is up and like I'm sleeping, or I don't,
I expected to fall asleep,
or I'm out of it. So they said, well, first we start playing, sort of very soothing, like cool,
spa
cool
music
jazz,
is what they said,
and usually that'll get you going. And they said, but if that doesn't work, then we start playing Bob Marley,
Get Up Stand Up,
and we play it really loud, and then everybody gets up at that point, and that's and that's it. And I was like, we're like, okay, whatever. So we go into our tanks and we shut the door, and it's a very crazy experience. Even if you don't really even fall asleep. I know for me, I didn't fall asleep, but my mind was definitely going to some weird places because it's just pitch black, and it's like no gravity. You feel like you're floating in space.
You're in super, super dense salt water.
Well, one thing is that they match the temperature of the water. It matches your body temperature.
See, I found the water to be a little cold.
I thought the water was a little cold too.
So I wanted it to be warmer. I get in there. They show you the bathroom. Okay, it's like they take you to the room, and it's a bathroom, and they show you the shower, and the first thing they say, I'm going to tell you my side of this beginning of the story. The first thing they say is, these are the earplugs. You screw them into your ears.
Yeah.
You want to do that first. The next thing you need to know is this water is incredibly salty.
Right, if you have any cuts.
You don't want cuts, and you also, once you get your hands in there,
don't touch your eyes.
You don't want to touch your eyes, or it will ruin the whole experience.
Yeah.
So I get in the tank, and I'm like, and the tank is this secret door behind the shower, and you're looking into this black pit, and it looks like you're gonna fucking die.
It's small too. It's like the exact size of your body.
It's like a coffin.
Yeah, it really is.
And so I get in there, and I lie down, and like, they tell you to lie one way, and there's this fucking space in the door, and there's light shining in, and it reminds me of the time I did Ibogaine, and my Devin's typing on his computer, and the light's keeping up. I'm like, this fucking light is making me crazy. So I put my head on the inside.
Well, it sounds like you weren't following directions, which is what ruined your experience.
So I lay down with my head on the inside, and I realized I forgot to put the earplugs in.
Right. So
I get up, and I put the earplugs in.
And then you touch your eyes?
And I touch my eyes. Like, oh, my eyes.
It was an amazing experience when you follow the very simple directions.
So then and then also, like, I'm doing this catering for work, and I have this big call with Madison Square Garden right after the float.
You're thinking too much.
And all I could think about was pastrami and how far pastrami would stretch for the people at like, how much money does it cost? I need this much for 600 people.
Were you seeing like floating in your...
So I lie down there, and then I'm thinking about, I'm focusing on the breath because I'm trying to do like meditation.
Right.
I'm praying because you got to pray.
It's a lot of pressure when you do the float because it's like it's supposed to be this experience that almost makes it like too much pressure.
And going to meetings, 12-step stuff, prayer and meditation are like the most important thing. And my prayer and meditation practice isn't great, but here I am for an hour and a half.
It's a long time.
In the float. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do besides try to pray and meditate? So I'm focusing on my breath. I'm praying, then my body, then pastrami, then my breath. Then and I'm just there.
But that's the beauty of the float. I think that's why it's so profound. There's nothing there besides you and your thoughts.
Right.
So it's actually like a very brave act to do a float because you are forced to just deal with it for an hour and a half, and that's very scary.
But I also remember when you gave it to me, I was like, an hour and a half? I was like, 20 minutes sounds ideal.
Yeah, it's a long time.
So we're in there, and like my mind is strobing. These are the things that my mind is strobing between prayer, meditation, my body, pastrami. When is this thing going to be over?
Right.
How long has it been that I'm in here?
Are your eyes
my
still
eyes
burning?
are burning. No, as soon as I had put the towel on my eyes,
earplugs are not fully
screwed in, and like, so I'm just going through this, and all I can think is, when is this going to be over? And I have to make.
And I hate my present from Linda.
Yeah, this is like the fucking worst present I've ever gotten, and I'm just in there, and also I like psychedelic experiences and like crazy mystical experiences. Like, I used to take psychedelic drugs all the time.
People say you can have them during a float.
And so then tell us about your float experience.
I mean, mine wasn't that profound as far as like I didn't like trip out or whatever, but what I enjoyed about it was just paying attention to my thoughts. I just kind of watched them and watched them kind of pass through, and which ones were sort of, and weird thoughts were coming up, like ones I didn't expect, and so I had fun with that. I followed the directions, so I wasn't having issues with like my earplugs or my eyes, so I enjoyed it. I probably wouldn't do it again.
You definitely won't do it again.
I didn't think it. I mean, I don't know. I find hippie stuff to be, as much as I love the idea of it, it's
you like the music and the look.
Yeah, I like the idea of going floating.
And you like the smell of patchouli.
Yeah, but so after the hour and a half was up, I was awake the whole time. So my little cool jazz came on, and I was like, all right, I'm out of here. And so I get out and I go into like the chill room.
The chill lounge.
There was a woman in there like drawing, like they have a book where you can like draw your like the visions.
Well, the guy says before we go in there, he goes, when you're done with your, and he's like very like new agey. He goes, when you're done with your float, you can go in the chill room and you can wear different color sunglasses and you can draw
your experience. And like they had all these different types of like waters, and so there was a woman in there. She had like barefoot and like Indian style. She was drawing,
drinking
like,
cucumber infused water.
I'm wearing the glasses, and so I was like, I gotta get out of here. And so I'm waiting I'm like, now I'm getting anxious. I'm like, should I be like drawing stuff? And so 10 minutes goes by and no Dave, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, why is he not? I'm like, did they blast lights? I'm like, oh, they probably have to play the Bob Marley. So 20 minutes go by and no Dave, and I'm like, what the heck what's going on? So I go over to the guy and I'm like, excuse me, is that guy still in there? I thought maybe you like left to go get coffee. Is that man? I thought maybe you left to go get coffee.
Is that weird man that I came with that you were supposed to share a tank with still in there?
I thought you had this crazy experience and just started like running down the street screaming. I didn't know where you were. So he said, oh no, he's left. He's not in there. And I'm like, no, he's still in there. I haven't seen him. And he goes, no. He goes, the Bob Marley. And we heard and I hear Get Up, Stand Up blasting. And I'm like, I think he's still in there. And he goes, no, there's no way. And I'm like, no, like really? So I'm like, can you go look? So he opens the door, the music's playing, and he goes, oh, he's still in the tank. And I'm like, what do you mean he's still in the tank? He goes, oh, I guess he never came out. And he said nobody ever sleeps through that.
I didn't sleep either. That's the thing. I got put into this.
So then he says he's going to put on the lights. And he goes, he might get a little startled, because you were in like this black tank. So now Bob Marley's blasting. He goes in, he puts on the lights, and then I think, I don't know. What happened?
Lights come on. I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, what happened to my spa music and my Bob Marley? And I came out screaming.
Yeah, he was very angry. I'm like, you realize you've been in there for over 2 hours.
And I didn't fall asleep. I planned on falling asleep.
I don't know if you didn't fall asleep.
No, I
So
didn't.
what were you doing for that half hour?
I was in some crazy fucking trance.
What was happening?
Pastrami, prayer, meditation,
So you were
my
awake.
body. No, I was in a trance.
Did you hear the Bob Marley?
I didn't hear fucking anything, and I yelled at the guy, you didn't play anything. There's no Bob Marley. I know if I hear Bob Marley.
You were asleep.
I wasn't asleep. I was in a fucking crazy deprivation tank trance.
Did you go draw it in the book?
No, we ran out of there.
We should have given you some.
I had my Madison
crayons.
Square. I had my Madison Square Garden meeting on the phone. I'm like, 600 people for pastrami costs this much money. But I came out of there like I was tripping, and that's the thing.
Yeah,
like,
and then what actually we and Dave were saying, what's very cool about a float is sort of the after effects, because in the moment it's like, whatever, this is annoying, but like for the rest of the day, he and I, right, we were like very like zenned out. Like it actually relaxes you later. Which, do you remember we said that? We said we actually felt really calm.
I felt like I was tripping when I came out of that float. I really did. We were on the road, and I'm like, because you're not used to the light, and I was out for like 2 hours in that
You
thing.
were in there for you shouldn't be in there for that long.
I tried to tell this story by myself on some episode with I think it was a big episode, like we had a big guest, and I tried to tell this story myself, but I knew that I couldn't tell it right without you, so I wound up taking it off. But people asked about it, so that's the float story.
The float story.
I don't recommend floating, but at the same time, I kind of do.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel both. I feel both simultaneously. I want to play a super dopey voicemail from this guy called Habitual Felon.
Okay.
Oh yeah, last episode I had talked about stories, dopey stories where you get to like beat the dealer, like where you rob the dealer. Do you have any stories where you remember ever getting over on a drug dealer?
No.
All right. Well, this is James, also known as Habitual Felon, with his beat the dealer story.
What up, Dave? What up, Dopey Nation? It's Habitual Felon. I just finished the episode from this week, and it was great. Really enjoyed it. Been enjoying them lately. Dopey's kind of evolving, and I'm glad to have been a part of it so early on, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for Dopey, and I hope that it's in the cards that you can do something like this full time, because I think that you're good at it. You have a lot to say, and I enjoy your insights. So keep it up, Dave. You're killing it, man. And so speaking about the episode, you asked if we had any stories about ripping off dope dealers, and I have one that's not really action packed, but it's a unique way, I think, that we ended up robbing this dope dealer once. So my wife and I were still dating. We weren't married. We were both early trying to stop using, but still dabbling. And it was Halloween. And so being addicts, we have the typical disdain for law enforcement. Most of our interactions with them end up in us going to jail or getting charged with something. So we, just in general, addicts don't particularly care for law enforcement. That's my view. So for Halloween one year, she dressed up as a prisoner, and she made a costume, like a dress that was like black and white stripes, and she had like the letterboard that you hold up when you get your mugshot taken. And I dressed up as a cop, a very realistic cop. So, I mean, military surplus pants and shirt button down with a badge, and like some of those fabric badges on the shoulders, and corporal stripes, and I had a radio and a utility belt and handcuffs and pepper spray, and I even had an airsoft pistol that looked like a gun in the gun holster. So I mean, and a mag light. I had a mag light. So I was a pretty convincing cop. Here's the difference, is that I had a prosthetic pig nose glued to my face and a pig tail. I forget what they call it. Squiggly, squirrely, whirly, spirally pigtail pinned to the back of my pants. So I mean, it was all fun. Everybody loved it. It was hilarious at the party. But like I said, we were trying not to use, but I wasn't ready to stop using. So I had a couple Four Locos and a bad attitude, and somehow convinced my wife to call her best dope dealer when we left the party at about midnight, and let's rob him. And I mean, it's not something she would have been on board with, but she was really she was more interested in getting clean than I was. And so one of the things that she would kind of let me do would be to rip her dealers off. And that way, she knows she was burning a contact, and that'd be, one more step between her and using. So, I mean, in some kind of weird way, this was for her, this was an attempt to reinforce or strengthen our recovery by eliminating another one of our contacts. But anyway, so she calls the guy. I'm in a cop uniform. She sets it up like she always does to meet him on the corner. She drops me off a block away. So I take my pig nose and my tail off before we get there. She pulls up, calls him, lets him know she's there, and he comes outside of his little trap house to meet her on the corner. So I see him walking to the car, so I start walking quietly. I'm just this big dude, and I completely look like a cop in every way. I even have a hat. I just look like a cop in uniform. I see them make the handoff. She hands him some money. I think we got a bundle, but we only had like $12 or $13 cash on us. So that's what she ended up giving him. And the idea was I was going to spook him, and he wouldn't even be able to count the money. So timing was very important. So I watched the body language of the two, and I could tell that an exchange was made. And as soon as it was, I pulled my mag light out, boom, hit him with the beam. Hey, stop right there. As soon as I said that, dude, I mean, this guy took off. He was a ghost. It was a flash through a yard. He did not go back in the house. He ran through the backyard, and he was just absolutely gone. And, I kind of yelled behind him a little bit, stop! But I didn't really care if he stopped or not. So then I came up to the car where my girlfriend at the time was, and shined the light in, and she was smiling, and I got in, and we took off, before he could come back or look around or whatever. So I thought that was pretty unique. Icing on the cake, we bought a bundle. He handed her a bundle. All good. That was great. We used that the next morning. I woke up and went out to the car to get something, and I find the remaining bags to a clip, which is 500 bags. So another 4 bundles. I'm sorry, 50 bags. Another 4 bundles in the car that he dropped into her car whenever he thought that the police were onto him, so he didn't get caught with them. So it was pretty extensive relapse. We never saw the guy again. Nothing came of it, but I thought it was an interesting way to rob a dope dealer. So if you find that it's applicable or you want to put it on Dopey, feel free. Shout out to all of my family on Twitter. Stay strong, Dopey Nation. Dave, as I said, you're killing it. Continue doing it, man. Nothing but positive vibes, and I hope the best for you, and I really, really, really hope that it becomes I hope that Dopey morphs into either opportunity that allows you to do something creative like this full time, or just Dopey itself carries you up out of that deli, and you can be putting that mind of yours to some more creative pursuits. And I'll follow it, man. I'll follow it. I dig it. Dig what you're putting down. Everybody stay strong. If you're using, please be careful. Don't do it alone. And don't die. Stay strong, Dopey Nation. Toodles for Chris. Under 7 minutes. Suck my thumb.
Habitual felon, I love that shit.
Yeah.
Really great voicemail. And it's funny, the last time Linda was on, it was a habitual felon.
I know his voice.
It was a habitual felon voicemail. Yeah. So we got to go because Linda's mom's with the baby and she's freaking out. I had a lot more to do. But we got to go. Linda, it was an action-packed episode.
Yeah.
This is a I hope the BBC does their piece. Mm-hmm. I was going to hold this episode off until the piece came out, but who cares? Yeah. So tomorrow, this episode is up. Lynn, Dad, come here. Lynn, what's your guess for the thing? For the 2 millionth download, what's your guess? We are currently, just so you know, at this moment, exactly at this moment at 6:38 on Thursday. What's the date, Dad? On Thursday, June. What's the date, Dad?
I don't know.
12th.
How do you not know the date? On Thursday, June 12th, we are at, I don't know. Fuck, man. I don't know where we're at.
1,960,000.
Get on a microphone. Woo! We're at what?
I think it's 1,965,000.
We're at 1,900,000.
Maybe.
He's just staring at the Dopey website in his bed. We're approximately at 1,968,000 downloads. Linda, what is your prediction for the 2 million mark? And know that if you hit it, you can win a free Dopey Just the Head long or short sleeve shirt in whatever color you want.
And you're serious about that.
Get on the microphone with Linda. They can't hear you if you just talk into space.
I predict that we will hit the 2 million mark Saturday at 6 a.m.
That's a random
Excuse
bullshit
me.
guess.
I don't appreciate that response.
That's bullshit.
Your turn, Alan.
Your turn.
Well, it's going to be June 19th.
June 19th.
Or June 18th.
What day is the week is that?
That's next Tuesday or Wednesday.
It will be sometime between Tuesday and Wednesday in the middle of the night, and I will miss it. So what's your prediction? What's your prediction, Dopey Nation? Send in an email to dopeypodcast@gmail.com.
Put the day and
They can't hear you if you talk into the space.
You better put the day and time, or else he won't send
Nobody has sent in a guess. Do you think we cut Vicky out and my dad out too soon in this episode, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay. You think we...
Do you think so?
Yeah, he especially kicked me out real
Well,
fast.
that was for the best. Dopey Nation, please comment if you think I kicked them out too soon. I just didn't feel like it was really bringing the Dopey. I figured the Dopey needs to be the way it's supposed to be.
I love listening to Alan. I could listen to him all day.
You should answer his phone calls then. Anyway, everybody loves you, Dad, on the show except me, and I thought Vicky was great.
Yeah.
And I think it's exciting that the piece is coming out.
When does the BBC stuff come out?
We don't know.
She said maybe the end of June or beginning of July, I think. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
All right, so stay tuned.
So, English people, world people, check it out. Leave a review so my dad has something to read on iTunes. Write us on Twitter. Write us on Reddit. Write us on Instagram. Dopey Nation, stay strong, and fucking toodles for Chris and Todd and everybody.
Yeah.
So no one take it personal. Who not talk about done? You think me come for done? All me have to do is send for the new gun. Anything test dead. We just fly off dozen head. Down the mercy.
Kill them.
Look a dill. Till a boy get killed. Look a dill. You better sign on the will. Look a dill. A boy get killed. Look a dill. Look up in the barrel. Limb by limb we a go cut them down. Send for the oxa. Take out the tongue. Limb by limb we a go cut them down. Send for the oxa. Take out them tongue. When them see me, see the hit man a come. See me, say me just can't done. See me, see the hit man a come. See me, say me just can't done. Them one tie. Me come a them funeral. Them things say. Them are the general. Them one tie. You come a them funeral. Them things say. Them are the general. Enough of them a pose up like a them run the world. Let me tell you something. For me gun it to me girl. Enough of them a pose like a them run the world. Let me tell you something. For me gun it to me girl. Me gonna hug up and kiss. Sleep with that night. If a boy try to think me shut out in my side. You know I and I is dynamite. When me hold my microphone a strictly truth and right. Limb by limb we a go cut them down. Send for the oxa. Take out the tongue. Limb by limb we a go cut them down. Send for the oxa. Take out the tongue. When you see me see the hit man a come. See me say me just can't done. See me see the hit man a come. See me say me just can't done. Them one tie. Look come on them funeral. Them things say. Them on the general. Them one tie. Look come on them funeral. One them no say. I man is a general. Pick your coffin. Are your burial spot? Turn us see I and I me coming down at pick your coffin. Are your burial spot? Turn us see cut the rank and rule up the spot. Pick your coffin. Are your burial spot? You know see I and I me coming down at you see the gunshot. When that fire hit at all the informer them be step back you see the gunshot. When that fire hit at tell them I and I rule up the spot you see the gunshot. When that fire hit at you must build a big house. Who overdub cut with flowers a door we have flowers span top. No pretty candle Well, hitch up in a that mind, me send you down there. Go cool and relax, you think a holiday in when you hitch up in a that. Listen, I and I on the mic just a chat. Them want tie, them want tie.
Kill them.
To come a them funeral, them things say, them things say.
Kill them.
Them are the general, them want tie, them want tie.
Kill them.
To come a them funeral, want them no say, them no say.
Kill them.
I manage the general, limb by limb, we a go cut them down, send to the oxa. Take out the tongue, limb by limb, we a go cut them down, send to the oxa. Take out the tongue, when you see me.
I wanna take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I wanna take a ride up in the sky. Watch this aeroplane just pass me by. And I wanna see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be good so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I wanna call my dad, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and it's all I ever had, and I wanna call my dad, and it's all I ever had, and it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever